Record. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Wellness Wednesday. I'm here with my wonderful business sister and friend, Amanda Berlin, or shall I say Amanda Gail Berlin. And I'm so excited to chat with you today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. I'm so excited, and I love chatting with you all the time under any circumstances, but I'm especially excited to chat about the inner work, which I know is completely your game.
That is my game, yes. So I know that you primarily work with businesses and entrepreneurs, but I think that your message on communication and connection really can apply to anyone. So why don't we kick it off by just telling folks a little bit about what you do and your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. So yes, connection is so important to me. I, in my professional life, spent 12 years in the New York City PR corporate world, in the agency realm, where I worked with all different major corporations that you've all heard of that wanted to get their message out there in a bigger way. And my role was really on a macro scale to help the loudest guys in the room be louder than their competition. And what that did for me was slowly annihilate my soul.
Yeah, you must have been there.
So it was interesting because in retrospect, I realized that it wasn't so much the work that was hurting my heart, but it was the culture that I was engrossed in. And I realized as I ventured out to do my own thing after feeling so disenchanted in the corporate world that I was actually really against moving into anything that was business oriented. I wanted to be a life coach. I tried fitness training and teaching fitness. And I dabbled in all of these things and sort of was crestfallen when none of them really felt like they were lighting me up. And at that time, I was the breadwinner in our family, and I was going to have a baby. And I was like, okay, well, now I really need to figure this out. And so I went back to my sort of communications roots to try to get some consulting work. And in that process, I realized that not only is this something that not everyone knows how to do, but it's actually an essential skill for any successful business. And I really loved it. That was kind of the operative thing, was that it was actually fueling my soul, and just I needed to be doing it in the right capacity. And so that's how it led me to be doing what I'm doing today, which is helping business owners hone their stories, figure out how to be more visible, burst out of their word of mouth bubble, leave behind the frustration of feeling like not enough people know about them, and like stop having that fist shaking moment when they see a competitor out there being seen and recognized and highlighted and feeling like that should be me. These are the people who I work with, and I help them tell their story and get out there in a bigger way.
Yeah, I love that. Well, first, let me just take a step aside and say, I just love to, hang out with someone who uses the word crestfallen. It's just not like every, I don't know if I've ever used that word, and it just makes me so happy. I love vocabulary.
Oh God, I try to make things as complicated as possible.
Second, if you are a business owner and you want to be out there and be visible, you are going to want to connect with this woman because she can certainly help you with that. And if you're not, that's okay, because we want to address that too. And one of the things that you and I, for years actually, have talked about is the stories that we tell ourselves and how they hold us back. And that can hold us back in our business. It can hold us back in our relationships. Or if we are in a larger corporate setting, it can hold us back in getting success there too. So can you talk a little bit about how those stories get in the way from us moving forward?
Absolutely. And, as I was starting to tell my story, it actually occurred to me that because you led in with the term connection, it occurred to me that I have actually a very complicated relationship with connection. And that's the story that I have always told myself, is like, I don't belong. No one cares what I have to say. No one wants to hang out with me. Like, these are vestiges, right? That all of us have, whether it's that specific story or another story. They're vestiges from another era of your life that actually aren't true anymore, whether they were even true to begin with. So the idea is that we carry these stories with us that inhibit us or allow us to kind of shrink away because we take these stories on as the truth. And that's true in my case, where I, would earlier in my business would venture to put myself out there. And that little voice in my head was like that high school girl saying, like, no one really wants to hang out with you. Like, just, are you really surprised that no one's showing up? Like, come on.
Yeah. What do you find to be one of the most common stories that, especially women, because I know you and I both have, primarily female audiences. What is one of the most common stories that women are, beating themselves down with?
Yeah. So I think it's more of like this knee-jerk, sort of acceptance that what you're doing is nothing special, that anyone could do this. It's no big deal. And we kind of leave behind all of that experience that we've had, all of those tests of our will, those even like, circumstantial experience, like day to day in a corporate job or in our personal lives, where we just assume like that's not, everyone goes through that, no big deal. But actually, even if everyone has gone through that, it's important to talk about it, because there's so many personal and professional trials that we go through that no one talks about. And if you have the courage to talk about them, then it brings people to you like a magnet, whether it's for business or friendship or otherwise. Like, your story really does serve a purpose for anyone out there who might be stuck in that prison that your story would let them out of.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think a story that I've told for many years is that if I know something, everybody else already knows it.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear it from me. They already know that, right?
Yeah, you have no insight. There's nothing original about any thought you've ever had, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're reading my mind. But I think it's also something that is very true with motherhood, right? There are so many things and challenges that people don't talk about.
Very true.
That the stories need to be shared in order to write a new story, but also to have that collective connection with one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually just got off of a call with a client who is kind of a case in point for that assertion, that she created a website called Undefining Motherhood to tell the story of her experience with recurrent miscarriage, and to create a forum for education and advocacy for women who have suffered pregnancy loss. And the statistics are just staggering about how sort of under the cover of darkness this entire experience really lies. And not so many women have experienced it, and so few people are aware that so many other women have experienced it.
Right. With so many of those life experiences, I think there's just a whole like layer of shame, and that people are just afraid to, as my friend Liz says, open the kimono.
Right.
So that's difficult. So if you want to begin crafting a new narrative for yourself, where do you start? Like, first, obviously recognizing it, and how do you recognize it and then rewrite it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think recognizing or just becoming aware of the things you're telling yourself are like mundanities of your own story, and just sort of setting that notion aside, and maybe just taking a few minutes to just free write your story from start to finish. But then I think what's so important, and you and I have talked about this, is having having a supportive, like sounding board around you,
Yeah.
people who can illuminate for you, like, actually, no, that is your unique experience. Or like, I've never heard someone talk about it the way that you're talking about it, or that, you know, whatever it is, you need that outside perspective. It's absolutely essential because you're so close to it and you've been telling yourself these counter narratives for so long that you need someone to come in and like puncture that bubble and drag you out of there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, so true. And one of the pillars that I talk about a lot in my work is environment. And one of the key components for environment to me are the people you surround yourselves with, or the people that maybe you don't even choose to surround yourself with, but they're there, either in
Right,
work
right.
or whatever, family. And so on the business side, I have found, you know, being a part of a mastermind group and being in coaching, I have to say you have so many times shown a light to illuminate things that I just are in front of my face that I just don't see. And that is so valuable, but also finding that kind of community or tribe outside of the workplace too. I have 4 fabulous girlfriends, the 5 of us. I always, in my calendar, I always write Fab 5 Zoom call. I think I've told them that, but these are just a long, long time friends that we have started to Zoom every week since the beginning of quarantine. And, you know, where we go back 30 plus years, some of us, but it has really deepened our relationship, I believe, to have that sounding board, you know, outside of the business life as well. And I feel like that can really do the same kind of thing, shine a light. And when one of them, like this week, was saying, like, I suck as a mother, we can talk about it and say, is that really true? You know?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so we need to, I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like solve these problems ourselves in a vacuum. That like, I should have figured this out by now, or why am I still talking to myself this way? When in reality, like like we're humans, we're relational creatures. So we need those other people in our lives to be like, hey, what's going on in there? Like, are you telling yourself that lie again?
Yeah. How do you find that social media like feeds into, you know, the challenge of breaking out of that situation?
Yeah, I mean, there is, of course, there's, you know, the long told story that like it's fake,
Yeah.
essentially. And so,
Filter.
yeah, they're right, exactly, over your entire life. I think though it gives us the opportunity to, on the flip side, actually be real and connect with more people with our true story, if you are willing to be so bold. And the, you know, the thing about it is you do need to measure your, your vulnerability and actually perhaps not share everything on
Yeah.
social media if you're not prepared to at this
Right.
point.
Right.
But, and I always tell clients, like, we need to work on a story that doesn't drag all the skeletons out of the closet, but only shares things that you've already processed. And so I think there's a balance between being willing to be real on social media, being
Right.
willing to cut through the filter, like you said, but also being a bit preservationist and ensuring that you're not oversharing and thus having that vulnerability hangover, or really kind of like re-experiencing the trauma of your experience all over again by making it so public.
Right, right. Yeah, I often say when I'm coaching business clients that there's a difference between personal and private, that there are things that should be perhaps always kept private, but there are personal things because people want to do business with the people they know, like, and trust. So people like to have that little behind the scenes look, you know, what's going on. They want to feel like they know you, but then there is a time where like there are things that should be kept, you know, kept private. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's just discerning the difference. And as you said, I see a lot of processing like online, like when you're in the midst of it, that's not really the time to share, I would suspect.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about just connection and community. before we wrap up, because you just ran a wonderful experience, a challenge, Connect Fest. And while it's geared towards business owners, I feel like we could take a page from that and apply it to our, our lives, especially in this time. As I said, I've started this weekly Zoom with some friends, but in general, I feel there's a major disconnection going on in the world right now. We're not able to hug. We're not even shaking hands. We're looking at screens all day. So can you talk a little bit about how what you do, your work, can help us create these connections that we are kind of starving for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, so Connect Fest was a 5-day challenge where I challenged participants to send one email a day to a different person. And I gave you the different type of person to reach out to reestablish connections that fell by the wayside, or recreate or create new connections. And the reason why that's so important right now is, I want you to drop the guilt of having either dropped the ball on responding to someone, or telling yourself oh, I totally messed that up. That relationship is in the garbage can now because I never followed up and it was totally my bad. Free yourself from that and just reach back out to somebody. That was one of the inspirations. But then the other inspiration is that your business, your life, your next job, your next relationship is, this is going to be redundant, but it's all about relationships. It's all about who you know. And so keeping your community nourished, keeping your, like you said, your environment, keeping your environment sound by nurturing those connections that you have is absolutely essential, whether you're trying to grow a business or you're just interested in being a productive human.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So whether you're looking for a client or a date, right?
Right.
You need to fuel the pipeline with some, some good energy to go out there. Yeah.
And it's actually all the same, because, you want to create the relationship, but then you want to tell people, be forthright about what you're looking for, what you're working on in your life or in your business. And that's how I coach clients, is if you have an idea that you want to pitch to a podcast or something, you just say I have an idea. Would you be interested in this? But the same thing goes, if you're looking to date or something, you could say hey, someone actually told me to do this. And I was oh yeah, that's kind of what I do in my business on that end. Just say hey, I'm interested in dating. I'm set me up.
Yeah. The more we put that out there, right? That's the whole more vibrational level, so that you can start attracting that. But if you're keeping it to yourself, just like if you're keeping what you do in your business to yourself, or you're keeping the fact that you're in the market to go on some dates, or you're concerned about the school year and you're a mom that's going to start homeschooling, or you want to connect with other moms, just say it, put it out there.
Absolutely. I can't believe I just said that just now. My face is red.
All these dates. So what would be one actionable step or takeaway that someone listening today could, get off the phone and go do? What should we do?
Yeah, I love that. So I would say make a new connection. So like I said before, maybe you're carrying around guilt that someone emailed you back in March when we first went into quarantine and you were I just can't deal. And you just let it fall by the wayside, and it's been haunting you since then. Just email that person and say you could even say that, I'm so sorry that I let this fall by the wayside. It's crazy times. I really do want to reconnect with you. I want to hear what's going on with you. I want to tell you what's going on with me. Let's set up a time. And it could be as easy as that. And it really just frees you so much, because it's you're offering yourself forgiveness for having not followed up at the time. Even if they don't even write back, you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's off your plate and you move on. So that would be one thing. Reach out to someone who you neglected to follow up with. The other thing would be reach out to Kristen, reach out to me, reach out to someone who is who's been on your mind to connect with, and you're like, oh, she's busy or whatever. You've been telling yourself stories about why now is not the time. Just
Right.
send the email, because most likely they're going to be thrilled to hear from you. It's like, we're waiting. That's the mindset that you have to be in to reach out, is like, they're waiting to hear from me.
I love it. That's going to be my new mantra. They're waiting to hear from me. I love it. I love it. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah. And I would love if wherever you're watching this, whether it is live in the group or later on YouTube on replay, to drop a comment below and let us know who you connected with. Or you don't even have to tell us like the name of the person, but just let us know that you connected with somebody and how that went. Because I would love to hear it. I would love to see just an avalanche of connections that are just coming out of this conversation. That would be so awesome. Before we wrap up, I always like to mention one essential oil, because that's one of the things that I love to do in my work. And actually, in fact, in my doTERRA team, which is my essential oil team, one of the things that I say often on our calls is there is no expiration on follow-up. So there is no expiration date. So one of my favorite oils for connection and communication is spearmint. And spearmint is the oil of communication. It's actually the oil of confident speech. So spearmint's the oil of confident speech. I wrote that down. So I like to take a little drop, and I just go like that every time before I'm going to have to present or chat on Facebook Live or whatever it might be. So if you've got some spearmint, whether you are, pitching a client, talking to a fellow parent or whatever, or on a date, for a little confident speech, put a little spearmint right here.
I love that. Yeah. I wrote that down.
It smells good. And tell people how they can connect with you and where to find you.
The people can connect with me at amandaberlin.com. No, I welcome any of you to reach out to me, amandaberlin.com. You can go over to the Connect tab, and there's a form there that goes directly into my inbox, and I would love to hear from you. You can ask me any question about communication, or actually love strategizing communication across the board, whether it's for business or personal. I've helped many a friend through challenging conversations with family and otherwise. So yes. Hit me up with any kind of question. I'd love to hear from you or connect with you in any way.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. And I can just second that and vouch for that. Amanda has helped me strategize through many, many things, both business and personal. So definitely hit her up with that. Or even just drop her a note to say you enjoyed seeing her beautiful face today.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Amanda. I truly appreciate it. And thanks for watching, folks. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, Kristen.